All right, welcome to Bet the Edge. I'm Jay Croucher here with a still present Drew Dinsick post the Boston Celtics triumphant Game 1 victory. Well, not really triumphant, but Game 1 victory by definition. We're going to talk about that and that series. Game 2, we're going to talk MLB team futures, and then we'll close out with a little Indy 500 chat where Drew is going to carry the team there. But let's talk about Celtics-Pacers. What was the experience like, Drew, watching the Boston Celtics play a home Eastern Conference Finals game?
Yeah, it was about as miserable as you could imagine. I don't understand why this team feels like they need this. Why they needed this drama? They needed to scare people into thinking that this was going to be a series. I guess we can be a little bit more technical here, but there were lapses in that game where it was just like didn't understand the coaching decisions, didn't understand the lack of defensive intensity at times, didn't understand why they weren't just running their offense. I think they very clearly just got away with one here. And there were some fluky performances in this game by certain Pacers that I don't think are repeatable. But the Pacers were at least playing like a coherent team and made things tough for the Celtics all game long. You look pretty squarely at what they were able to do off of turnovers, where they created fewer turnovers than the Celtics, but got 15 more points out of it or something ridiculous like that. Like that's not that's not how you want to live and die. Where statistically you're winning every single way down the head to head, except for you're just conceding all of these free points and making it close, more of a game. And there were portions of the game where it felt like Tatum was trying to take over for legacy's sake as opposed to just playing within the offense of the Celtics. And he did at times, have like a higher gear that helped the Celtics get over the finish line. But I don't know, man. I came out of this game thinking I need to take the Mavericks more seriously as a potential winner, and I need to find at least some ways to kind of balance my risk here, because I dumped more money on the Celtics in that last game at 9 market was with me in general, but it didn't matter. You got spotted a 12-point lead, for crying out loud, and yet you needed an absolutely miraculous three. Again, Pacers, what are we doing letting a three get off at that point? But that's a different discussion entirely. To go to overtime, and then in overtime, you got a couple of good breaks where you created some hardship for Tyrese Halliburton. But the quintessential kind of sequence of the whole game as a Celtics backer and fan in terms of pulling my hair out was the end of the third quarter, where they finally play superlative basketball for a 5-minute stretch that went like 16-2 run. And you were like, yes, thank you. I knew they had this in them. It was anchored by Luke Cornett playing some phenomenal defense. And then Sam Hauser gets off the bench. And you're just like, why? This team isn't like exhausted. They're not gassed. What do we need? Sam Hauser to get some playoff reps because he's a valuable part of the future of this franchise? What are we doing here? And immediately with Tatum on the bench and Hauser in the game, it was just one-way traffic for the Pacers. They're getting 4 offensive rebounds, in sequences, and you're just like, this is a joke. And Tyrese Halliburton hits the miracle 3 at the end of the third quarter to make it a 1-point game. And you just knew at that point, like, hey, this is going to come down to the wire, and the Celtics might lose this one. And the fact that they won was pretty lucky, it felt like.
Yeah, it was certainly extremely lucky, down 3 without the ball, less than 10 seconds left. That is pretty much game over most of the time. I think with Boston, having watched an agonizing amount of Boston Celtics playoff basketball the past 3, 4, really 5 years. I was on Boston in the bubble as well, in an ill-fated Eastern Conference Finals against my personal nemesis, Jimmy Butler. But like, this is just how this team is kind of always going to be. Like, I just think that Brown and Tatum, who are overall excellent players, but their flaws are just incurable. Like, they're not going to become super cerebral players on offense. I just don't think that's going to happen at this point. They're going to make the same baffling decisions. Jason Tatum is going to be taking fadeaway jumpers when you're down 3 with 12 seconds left off an offensive rebound. That's just what he's going to do. I just don't think that is going to get fixed. But the thing is like, you can be a not super smart team and you can still be the best team and you can still win the title. And that's still likely what is going to happen. They're still, they're minus 175 to win the title. And I just think back to, they remind me of, in a way, the 2021 Bucks, who and I was on them all throughout the playoffs, and they were just equally as infuriating as the Celtics, where they just did dumb stuff on offense over and over again. It's like Drew Holiday, who's now a common link, and to be fair, Drew, I think, was the kind of smartest player last night, and I thought he was actually the best player on the floor, despite Tatum's stat line and plus minus. I thought Drew Holiday was the best player, but it'd be like for the Bucks to be like Drew just taking these early clock step back threes with a hand in his face, or just Giannis kind of not having a plan, or Brook Lopez isn't the smartest player on the planet, and to be Bud playing like Jeff Teague or whatever. It's just like this team is shooting itself in the foot so often, and the Celtics are similar. But what both of those teams can really fall back on, what the Bucks could and the Celtics can, is that the defense, like Tatum and Brown, for all their sins on offense, those guys are magnificent defensive players when they are locked in. And I thought that showed itself last night. And that was the difference. Like Brown was phenomenal on defense. He was a game wrecker. And then Tatum was great too. Tatum stonewalling Tyrese Halliburton on the potential game winner at the end of regulation. Also, what a kind of trump card it is to have in your back pocket that, Miles Turner is killing Al Horford in the first half. Let's put Jason Tatum onto him. Like, that's a pretty nice thing to have for your superstar wing player, perimeter creator, to just be able to guard the opposing team's center and basically shut him down. So what overall did you make of the Celtics defense last night?
You're absolutely right. It was phenomenal. The problem is, what is a great way to trump really good half court defense? Making easy work of your transition opportunities, which is really, really what kept the Pacers in this game. You brought up the Miles Turner mismatch against Horford. That felt problematic in the first quarter. And honestly, the switch to Tatum was a breath of fresh air. But the Pacers are playing as a very cohesive unit right now, and it really did feel like, okay, well, this isn't working anymore. Now we got this. Well, now we got this. Now Halliburton's going to make some absurd threes, and and now we're really going to put pressure on you this way, through transition. And it was like, it didn't feel great that the minutes for Luke Cornett felt very important. Like his particular presence. Like I can't believe we're here where this super team is counting on 15 good minutes from Luke Cornett and not sending guys to the free throw line. Like that's kind of what matters. But there are issues with size that I'm very, very keen to see what kind of shape Porzingis is when he comes back. I'm hoping he comes back. Not getting like a ton of positive reports out of this unit for whatever reason.
Game 4 is the expectation, according to what
that slid now 3 times. It was going to be maybe the end of the second round. Well, game 1 of the Eastern Conference Finals, so they got a big break. Okay, well, game 3 of the Eastern Conference Finals. Well, 4. Like this continues to now just get pushed into the future, which I don't love. The Brown and Tatum defense, both of their specific roles and versatility were on display, and they were awesome. The point of attack defense I thought was fine. A little bit weak on closing out 3-point shots at times. Didn't really enjoy any of the minutes that TJ McConnell was on the floor, because he was kind of getting to the spots he wanted and getting whatever mid-range 2 he felt like he was capable of hitting at any given time. But it's really strange that they can be on paper such a dominant looking team, but then the minutes out there with Hauser and Pritchard on the floor, you're just like holding your breath. And the minutes where Tatum and Brown are turning the ball over inexplicably, and you're just like, just put it in Drew Holiday's hands, please. Your comment I thought was totally fair, which was every time the going got tough and Drew Holiday found the ball with this, got an offensive rebound or fought, got a good open look with the ball in his hands, you're just like, whew. Why is this the case with a team that is just so much better on paper than the Pacers? I don't know, man. I'm part of my head, I'm like, back to the well, like just keep playing your numbers, bet the Celtics again, because now it's 8.5, so it's even less inclined to it's even more in favor of what my numbers would say. And to a degree, you might have gotten the Pacers' best shot. So you got a complete fluke of a game out of Obi Toppin here from Indiana. I think that some of the success that Miles Turner had early in the game, not going to be easy to replicate for the rest of this series for him. So, yeah, back to the well for me with the Celtics, and surprised that the total didn't adjust more, if anything, because as you know, it was not especially close in regulation to the closing total, and it didn't even feel like that was as efficient offensively as either team could be. So, yeah, I think Celtics and over, back to the well.
Yeah, it's funny. I was talking to a mutual friend of ours who bets the NBA for a living about the Celtics. So I think a really interesting betting phenomenon where like the gap between what the market thinks of this team and what the kind of casual fan thinks is just so that there is a giant crevice there where like people thought that the Nuggets would be favored in the finals. They were never going to be favored by market in the finals. And the friend I was speaking to was like, feels like I load up on this team at big minus numbers to win this series every playoffs, and then I'm sweating out a game 6 on the road that they need to win force game 7, just like over and over again. There is something about the Celtics that I don't know if it breaks the numbers or it's just like it's still relatively small sample, but there were a couple of plays in overtime that just really summed up this team for me, where I think the problem with Boston on offense, and it's usually always on offense that the problem is, although Al Horford was getting absolutely cooked last night, and that's going to be a problem for the rest of the series, I think, because he might just not be at the level anymore. But on offense, their issue is they just play with a lack of intention, a lack of calculated, smart intent, where these 2 plays in overtime, one where Tatum jumps up in the air, leaves his feet, then throws the pick 6 to Tyrese Halliburton. It's like, that, which is obviously stupid. Like Tatum shouldn't be leaving his feet like that and just throwing it to Tyrese Halliburton without knowing what he's going to be seeing when he leaves his feet. But to me, the more stupid thing is like that play, it's Drew Holiday, who has Tyrese Halliburton on him, coming up to set a screen around midcourt so Jason Tatum can get Andrew Nembhard off of him and get Halliburton on him. Can we just throw the ball to Drew Holiday, who has Tyrese Halliburton on him? And Drew Holiday's been putting Tyrese Halliburton in the goal and getting like 90% shots whenever he does that. And then there was another play a bit later where Tatum, who again has Nembhard on him, throws the ball to Jaylen Brown, who's coming off like a flare, and he seems like he's open for 3 for a second. And then Siakam comes out of nowhere. The 3 is closed down. And so Jaylen Brown has 2 options. He's like, all right, well, I can throw it back to Jason Tatum, who has Andrew Nembhard on him, or I can drive headfirst into Pascal Siakam and Miles Turner and just see what happens. And he does that. He chooses the latter option because he's Jaylen Brown. He's always going to make the wrong decision in these positions. And then he just gets stonewalled at the rim. Fortunately, he gets knocked out of bounds. Celtics keep the ball. But that is just the issue. Like, they just don't seem to be able to just devise calculated, smart, scientific offense. And I think back to the game that Luka Doncic played against the Clippers in Game 5, where Luka just all game was just playing with just an incredible amount of intent and purpose, and he knew exactly what he wanted to do. He was like a chess master out there, and you just don't see the chess master aspects of this Boston team. And ultimately, I don't think it's really going to matter, because I think they're going to win the title anyway, because they just have so much talent, and the defense is going to be there, and they are just going to be able to talent their way on offense, but they're not maximizing what is out there on the floor with just the decisions that they make.
Yeah. And I mean, they may have gotten extremely lucky that they're getting this test now before they get the Mavericks, because
the T-Wolves.
or the T-Wolves, whatever, you name it, before they get to the finals. Like, honestly, like and I mean, I don't want to be making a leap of faith here that Missoula is going to watch the tape and learn some of these lessons, right? But this was your warning shot, guys. Like, this team that's you're up against is going to give you, they're capable of giving you the business. And honestly, like, I got the stomach to back the Celtics at 8.5 in Game 2, but I don't know if I'm really that interested in laying it on the road with these guys, considering what we've seen from the Pacers offense, particularly at home in these playoffs. So I don't know, man. Like, I still think the Celtics come through. I still think it could be 4-1. I think it could be 4-0. But no, this team is just determined to make it hard.
Yeah, I think the Celtics have some problems in this series where or at least on defense to an extent, where with the Pacers, like early season Halliburton just seems like he's back now.
Yeah.
So that's the problem, because he was playing at a borderline first team All NBA level earlier in the season. And the Celtics have a problem with that one because Indiana's just going to have an awesome offense. They're the best offense in the league. And with Halliburton, just that level that he's playing at. And then also the fact that the Celtics, they're just small now without Porzingis. They don't really have a way to kind of load up and add size. And so last night they kind of got crushed on their defensive glass. So that's another issue for them that they've got to combat. But ultimately, I just think that, one, they'll be able to do enough on defense, even with the strengths that Indiana has. And then also, I just think this is it's an incredible series for Tatum and Brown and Holiday to score because but Nembhard and Halliburton, they're too small. They're not strong enough to deal with these guys. Like all three of those Celtics can just get at Tyrese Halliburton, just put him in the goal and just get something good. It's just they just need to be a little bit more calculated. Like, yeah, Drew Holiday can just kind of dribble his way in from the perimeter. I'm not sure I want Jason Tatum like ISO'd against Tyrese Halliburton starting at mid-court. Like, can we get Tatum in the post instead? Because Tatum's his strength over Halliburton isn't going to be like speed and cooking him necessarily from half court. It's going to be more just overpowering him in the post, which, and that led ultimately to the and one that, effectively won the game. So, yeah, the Celtics are one of the most infuriating teams.
Can you give me like a real quick grade or read on Mazzulla?
I am a Mazzulla guy. It's just like I'm a Cat guy and a Gobert guy. It's not a great hill to be on, but it's what I've chosen for myself. I think with Mazzulla, I don't know how much you blame the late game offense on him or whether that's just that Tatum and Brown just aren't super cerebral players on offense. I think that last night his error was, I don't know why it took them a full half to get Al Horford off of Miles Turner. And like playing drop coverage against that was just an absolute mess. Turner was just cooking them repeatedly. I don't know why that took so long. That should be like 3 plays and let's change it because this is just going to keep looking the same. And then secondly, I don't understand how Derek White is only playing 36 minutes in regulation. Like, that's ridiculous. Like, how is Derek White getting 36 minutes and Peyton Pritchard's getting 23? Like, this is the time of the series, Joe, where you need to be pushing your guys before Porzingis comes back. Like, this is the night to play Derek White 42 minutes in regulation. So without Porzingis, like, they've just got to play lesser guys more minutes. That's the problem, is when you kind of sell out, quote unquote, to get a super team, you're just going to have less depth. And like Hauser and Cornette, like, they're just not great. And so those guys are playing more because Porzingis is out. Horford has to play more. I don't think Horford's like a bad player or anything, but clearly he's not at the level or close to Porzingis, and he's in trouble in this series because the Pacers are getting him out in space and seems like they can get whatever they want. But yeah, I think Mazzulla's got to ramp up the minutes and then be a bit more intentional on offense. They just need to have less like brain fades on defense. I'm not sure that outside of the Miles Turner thing, I'm not sure how much that was structural or just like they're just doing dumb stuff and not communicating, which led to these runs. Particularly the one at the end of the third quarter that you mentioned. So yeah, I don't know. But Mazzulla, I think we'll find out all we need to know about Joe Mazzulla in the finals, should the Boston Celtics get there, God willing. All right. Grand Slam tennis returns to Peacock next week when the biggest stars face off on the clay courts of Roland Garros. Don't miss the French Open, May 27th through June 9th. All right. Major League Baseball, which is a less unnerving sport at the moment than the NBA, watching the Celtics, who have been very good to me over the journey. I'll always thank them for 21-22, where they delivered me Marcus Smart and the Eastern Conference and the Atlantic Division. But since then, it has been rough, and I wish that I wasn't always on this type of team, but does feel like at least my lot in life to be on the team that the numbers bear out are a juggernaut, and everyone focuses on the kind of isolated, stupid things that they do. But it's not fun, but so be it. Major League Baseball, though, Drew, we've spoken about some of the awards markets. We'll focus more on the teams today, the team futures. Have you bet anything in terms of pennant World Series divisions?
My team that I have eyes for, and I have not pulled the trigger on yet. There are two. In the AL East, it is the Orioles. I am cognizant of the Orioles' June schedule, which is really, really tough, and the fact that they're relying on so many young guys and really haven't, I don't think, figured out exactly the right way to put every young guy in the right position so far. Hopefully, they don't get swept by the Cardinals today in the doubleheader, but the Orioles to me stand out as the team in the AL East at the end of the day, and I think they're going to run through July and August. Their July and August schedules just look absolutely tasty. So that is the kind of pennant winner, division winner that I have the most interest in right now. The fact that the Yankees are in that race at the top of the board right now, and the fact that they're such a well-regarded team despite having very clear and obvious weaknesses means that it's probably going to come down to the Orioles winning the AL East for me to have a positive book in my MLB futures this year. And then in the AL West, I think the Rangers are still pretty clearly underrated at plus 240. I know that the Astros are coming and people are kind of talking themselves into that team getting healthier and being as dynamic as ever down the home stretch. But I still think that the Rangers are the class. And I'm just saying I want to go against the Mariners, despite the fact that they have shown you some positive things. They just really can't develop any type of offense against elite pitching so far this season. So for me, it's going to come down to Rangers doing something special in the second half and being patient and getting the best price available for the Orioles.
Okay. Yeah, I think with the Orioles that there is something where a lot of the publicly available projection systems maybe aren't baking in just the kind of variance and upside that Baltimore's youth gives them. Like they have, all of these incredibly young players, like guys like Gunnar Henderson isn't going to be projected just as a, MVP type of player because even if he's projected close, I think he has even more upside. Guys like Cowser, if Jackson Holiday comes back up, this team is littered with high upside youth. They also have just an insane amount of hitting prospects to go and trade for another arm at the deadline. And then the Yankees, you would say, just in a nutshell, just have more health concerns, particularly when they're so dependent on, guys like, Aaron Judge in particular. We'll see what Garrett Cole looks like when he comes back. Is Carlos Rodon going to last the whole season? Probably just some more health downside with the Yankees compared to the Orioles. With the Astros, like everyone's kind of, there's a lot of momentum behind the Astros to win the division. I think the market price right now is relatively fair. Like this isn't necessarily your older brother's Astros. Like a lot of these pitchers, like Verlander just doesn't look very good. He might just not be done, but kind of done adjacent. Fran Valdez has had his struggles. The offense just hasn't been the all-world unit that it's been in the past with guys like Alex Bregman have really struggled this season, though I will say, like right now, and I still think he's a little bit of meat on the bone at current price, even though he's had a bad game today against the Angels as we're recording. But like Kyle Tucker is the MVP of the American League right now. He leads everyone in both versions of WAR, in slugging, in OPS, in home runs. He's just gone a little bit under the radar because the Astros have scuffled, but he's been the best player in the AL so far, and his kind of ascendance is counteracting a bit of some of the other struggles. I will say, looking at the pennant and World Series markets, if I was going to make a bet on anyone right now in those, it would be on your San Diego Padres at 28-1 to win the National League. That is, I think, a little bit too inflated, given that, a couple of things. One, the roster is loaded with talent. They have also shown intent to win now, despite the Juan Soto trade, going out and getting Dylan Cease and Luis Arias. I think this team probably has scope to make additions at the deadline. And then the other thing too is that, like, coming into the season and the early part of the season, it looked like perhaps a fool's errand to try and take on the Dodgers or the Braves, at least in terms of if you just math out the series prices and the probability of facing one of those two juggernauts, you might be better off just waiting. But both of those teams seem relatively mortal, particularly the Braves, just with Spencer Strider not being there anymore, some of the struggles that their other pitchers have had. Acuna, I don't know what has happened to Ronald Acuna. I really could have used this slump towards the end of last season to get my Mookie Betts ticket home for MVP, but he hasn't looked himself, even if some of the underlying stuff has turned the corner, and the offense just hasn't been nearly as dominant. And then the Dodgers have their issues with depth. So I think that the Padres at 28-1 to win the NL prefer that to 50-1 to win the World Series, just given that I think on average they would be a dog in the World Series. But the San Diego Padres, that would be my horse draw.
Okay. I'm all for that. I love the idea of finding a runner at big price in the NL. The chaotic nature of the early round series and the history that the Dodgers and Braves have of stumbling in those moments is enough for me to say let's at least take a shot here before we get to closer to the wire. The fact that the Diamondbacks did it last year was not on my radar, and I don't think the Diamondbacks are playing well enough to warrant consideration this year. So Padres is perfectly fine with me. In general, I like how they're set up for playing well in their park in particular, and I think the NL Central is pretty much a toss. Although, is there a bet to be made on who wins the NL Central? I guess I've been trying to kind of cool my jets a little bit on the Brewers, finding reasons to say they shouldn't be at plus 125 right now. But the Cubs are not inspiring me. The Reds and the Cardinals are a joke, and Pirates is just not going to happen. So it might just ultimately default to Milwaukee. Do you have a read there?
Not a great one. I like Milwaukee's offense, where William Contreras is the third favorite, I think, rightfully for MVP. Christian Yelich looks kind of back to being Christian Yelich. They're getting production from guys like, Willie Adames, who's a war beast, Joey Ortiz as well, even though he's overperforming his underlying stuff a little bit. He's been great as a rookie. The pitching just isn't great in terms of the starting pitching. Like after Freddie Peralta, it gets a little bit grim. So I think at current prices, I would lean more to the Cubs, who have a lot of upside as they get healthier. But I think that is fairly neck and neck. I don't really like either of those teams in the outright markets. Another reason I like the Padres is just that, as you shift to the playoffs, like one of their issues is a lack of depth, which I think doesn't matter as much in the playoffs, where they can ride, Cease and Darvish, who are a legit top two. Michael King and Joe Musgrove haven't been great so far this season, but those guys have upside as well. And then the lineup is just stacked. You have Fernando Tatis and Manny Machado, and Jake Cronenworth seems to be back to playing at an all-star level. Jurickson Profar would be top 10 in MVP if the season ended today. And that's probably not going to continue, but he's been awesome. You add Arias, Ha-Seong Kim as well, who's not having a great season, but was incredible last year and is still very slick in the infield. So yeah, I like the Padres, like their upside. They are kind of a cursed team, but that's fine. No issues riding with the cursed team at 28-1 to win the National League. All right, get ready for the greatest spectacle in racing this Sunday. The world's fastest drivers go head-to-head for a chance to claim their place in racing history. It's the Indianapolis 500, beginning at 11 a.m. Eastern, only on NBC and Peacock. All right, Indy 500 preview, Drew. Such as the nature of our racing segments, be it in vehicles or on animals, I will largely defer to your expertise here. Scottie McLaughlin is the favorite to win the Indianapolis 500 plus 550. Is he your bet in this market, or do you have someone else?
I love Scottie McLaughlin. Don't get me wrong.
Right.
But plus 550 is too short. He should be closer to 8-1. The shot I'm going to take is the other Scottie, which is Scottie Dixon. He, of course, was our Long Beach Grand Prix champion. He rode a heck of a race there, by the way. And I mean, the real story about what's going on right now on IndyCar circuit in general is, there's not consensus between people who handicap and people who cover the sport of who are the best guys right now. I would say that you've had a huge step backwards this year from Alex Palou in general, that has kind of left the door wide open for this next group of guys to come storming through. And just in terms of what they did to their cars and what they did with their teams and how they've positioned themselves for this race in particular, McLaughlin and Dixon, the two Scotties, are the guys that I had circled. And at 10-1 versus plus 550, it's got to be Dixon. So price exclusively. I'm going to take Dixon here. And as we're watching the race live, if there's an opportunity to get some exposure to McLaughlin, I will. McLaughlin had a really, really, really nice race down in Alabama a couple weeks ago. He was underwhelming in Long Beach, but those are the two hottest cars on the circuit, from what I can tell you. And I think Dixon has not won the Indy 500 since 2008. We're going back to the old George Bush years, George W. Bush years, not the George H.W. Bush years. Before you could find an Indy car title for a picture of Scottie drinking the milk on the Brickyards. But this is the year for him. Really like the way that team is set up, and in general, with kind of parity at the top of IndyCar right now. Love getting what I think is one of the top two drivers at 10-1. So Dixon for me. And I don't know, have you ever watched the Indy 500? Do you have any connection to it with Memorial Day Sunday and the Brickyard, the Brickyard magic?
I wouldn't say I have an amazing connection to it. Doesn't get a ton of publicity in Melbourne, Australia, like other US sports do. But as soon as I joined NBC, and also just pricing it in my previous life as head of trading, did get some exposure to it. Certainly is extremely popular, perhaps not as much from a betting perspective, which, if you are deep into IndyCar, then that's great for you, because there's not going to be as much liquidity. But no, it's a little bit of a gap. How did you get into it?
I just have gravity towards these major events. Like, this is like a 400,000 person, this is mega. And it's cool. It's the same exact sentiment as the Kentucky Derby. It's extremely cool that this year was the 150th running, right? Like, the Indy 500 track is basically the same as it was in 1909 when they were doing, Model T kind of nonsense out there, right? Like, this is very cool that it has this amount of history, and they do still get the Indy cars coming through, personally, like the Daytona 500 misses me, Talladega misses me, NASCAR misses me in general. But the Indy cars are pretty special. Seeing them in person in Long Beach, and the fact that they come through Long Beach has always kept me into the race. And you're going to put two similar experiences of F1 versus IndyCar side by side, and F1 is like virtually decided before they start qualifying every week, and IndyCar has parity at the top, and uncertainty, and more passing, and more excitement, and the pit matters more, all of the above. Like, I think as far as kind of having an interest in car racing, the IndyCar circuit and the biggest race of them on that circuit, the Indianapolis 500 standalone.
Okay, well, you can check it out this Sunday, 11 a.m. Eastern on NBC and Peacock. We are done for now, though. Hopefully everyone wakes up to a resounding Dallas Mavericks victory. Fortunately, we don't know the result of that at present. But for now, don't forget to check out NBCSports.com for more information to help you with your wagers. Thanks to those watching on the NBC Sports YouTube channel. If you're listening to us in podcast form, don't forget to rate and subscribe. Also, a reminder to find all your favorite NBC Sports shows on Amazon Music. Just head to amazon.com/NBC Sports. From Jay Crouch and Drew Dinsick, we'll see you tomorrow.